John, I see the live button on the screen. Does that mean we're going?
Yep, you can go ahead and start, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'm going to call to order the April 5th, 2021 meeting of the Ventura County Aviation Advisory Commission. Seeing that a quorum is present, and we'll start by doing a pledge of allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Anna, roll call.
Yes, Robert Trimborn,
Here.
James Flickinger, Gary Jacobs has been excused, Maggie Bird,
I'm here.
Adriana Vondergraaf,
I'm here.
Nanette Metz is absent, Bobby Williams,
Here.
Bruce Hamus,
Here.
Steve Weiss.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. And why don't we have people that are also with the staff announce who's online staff? Just Kip.
Madeline Hurley.
Kip Turner, Director.
Dave Nancy, Deputy.
Don Feldhands, Airport Operations Supervisor.
Ana Castro, admin support.
Thank you. I'll entertain approval of the minutes of the March 1st meeting.
So moved, Steve Weiss.
I second it, Maggie.
Call for the question, Anna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, so moved. Next up is the public comment period for items not on the agenda. Do you have anybody in the queue for public comment, John?
Yes, we have one raised hand. Let me get him in real quick. And Walter, you want to go ahead. Is it for this comment or for an agenda item?
This is for just public comment, not an agenda item.
All right, you can go ahead and begin.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. I am Walter Hagedorn, chairman of the Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council. 7 years ago, my wife and I built our retirement home in Oxnard Shores. At the time, we were aware of Oxnard Airport and the fact that there would be some noise involved with its operation. As I became involved with the affairs of the community, joined the Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council, serving several years as vice chair and the last two as chairman, the problems concerning the safety and noise of overflying aircraft became apparent. Due to the community concerns, the neighborhood council hosted a public meeting with the airport staff. The explanation of how the airport functions was informative, but things got heated when members of the public pressed the staff on why rules were not being enforced. In the end, staff told us that they had no control over where the pilots flew when they left the airport. This did not sit well with the public, and the complaints to us have continued over the years. Those of us living in Oxnard Shores bought our homes with the understanding that flight schools and clubs were aware of and would follow these guidelines, which require planes to stay east of the Edison Canal and north of Woolley Road and be held accountable for knowing and following the guidelines. And the tower would request these pilots violating the guidelines to follow them unless at the time of their flight it was unsafe to do so. It is reasonable for homeowners to expect these guidelines to be followed. What we have seen over the last year is that flight schools, clubs, and private pilots are routinely ignoring the guidelines. They are consistently flying west of the Edison Canal and south of Woolley Road, often at low altitudes. Some days, there are as many as 10 planes conducting close pattern work and violating the airport guidelines. We have seen over the last year, the volume of air traffic over densely populated areas of the city also presents a very real safety problem. Recently, a plane made an emergency landing on 5th Street. There was a crash at the Camarillo Airport, and flight was forced to dump fuel over the harbor as it was anticipating a crash. We only ask that the airport act as a good, safe neighbor and respect the interests of the nearby homeowners. If planes cannot stay east of the canal, north of Woolley Road, flying the left traffic, then we ask that you move the planes conducting close pattern work to right traffic, which would have planes flying west and north over the airport, which is still undeveloped, providing substantially more room for the planes to operate without overflying residential neighborhoods, and provide a less populated area in which to conduct an emergency landing if necessary. It is not our desire to shut down the airport. We support it. The Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council and the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council and other community groups are eager to work with the County of Ventura to resolve these problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haggett. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, but I can't see the entire spelling. So
That was fine. Thank you.
thank you. Are there any other public comment?
I don't see anybody else with their hands up. No.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. Unfinished business is none. New business, item 6A.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just going to announce the item, and then you can give the presentation. So item 6A is approval of an authorization for the Director of Airports or designee to sign a grant easement agreement with Southern Cal Edison for the relocation of a power pole at the Camarillo Airport Business Park. Mr. Director, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I'm going to turn the floor over to Madeline Harrell, our lease manager, who is with us tonight. And so Madeline is prepared to speak on this item.
Good evening, Commissioners. I have an item from Southern California Edison requesting an easement. They've got a program where they inspect poles, and from time to time, poles need replacement. In this event, they needed additional guy wire attachment and support, which fell outside of their existing easement area. And for that reason, they asked us for another section to be granted as an easement. So this has been reviewed by County Council, and it's a minor relocation of the pole, a guy wire that sits kind of behind the existing monument sign as you come in Airport Way. So this is basically something that they do fairly frequently, but because this guy wire fell outside of their existing easement area, they needed to ask for additional space.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions from the commission for clarification purposes? Hearing none, are there any public comment, John?
Not at this time.
Thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion for discussion.
Move approval, Adriana Vandegraaff.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Annie, you want to make a roll call?
Yes, Robert Trimborn,
Aye.
Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Adriana Vandergraaf,
Yes.
Bobby Williams,
Aye.
Bruce Hamus,
Yes.
Steve Weiss.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next item is item 6B, approval and authorization for the Director of Airport or designee to sign an MOU, a memorandum of agreement between the County of Ventura and the Federal Aviation Administration for the operation of FAA facilities at the Camarillo Airport. Mr. Director.
You're on mute, Kip.
If you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madeline Harrell, our lease manager, is handling this item as well. Madeline, please.
Thank you. Commissioners, this is an item that came before us. We have 3 leases that were existing leases for different equipment at the Camarillo Airport, one of which has expired, 2 of which had expired and are on month-to-month holdover, and 1 of which expires later this year. The FAA approached us and asked that we consolidate those 3 agreements into one memorandum of agreement. So it's not a lease, it's an MOA. And they drafted language which we have reviewed. It's got a couple of different paragraphs that are new that have to do with security and communications, internet, that was new to us. So most of this language was already included in our existing agreements. This is a new agreement for 20 years and covers those 3 pieces of equipment. One is the surface observing system, the other is the wind instrument, and the third is the air traffic control tower. We're looking for your approval for this 20-year MOA.
Thank you. Any questions of clarification from the commission?
Yes, I have one, Madeline, just for clarification. And I did, as most of you know, I did contract negotiations for probably close to 40 years. And so a memorandum of understanding is no different than an agreement in absence of a formal agreement. So I just want it to be stated for the record that in lieu of a formal agreement, the memorandum of understanding will be
Equally as contract enforceable.
right. Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I take it this is a forum agreement that the FAA uses at all airports.
Right, and we did, there was quite a bit of delay because there was new language that they had added. The Trump administration had added some additional security language, which was being reviewed and that they wanted to include. So we had to wait about 3 months to be able to complete our contract.
And we had county council review all of that and make sure it was in, it conformed to the county's needs and expectations as well.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Do we have any public comment, John?
No public comment at this time.
Hearing no public comment, I'll entertain a motion on the staff recommendation.
So moved. Steve
Okay.
Weiss.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the question. Anna, roll call vote.
I will do that in one moment, Mr. Chair. May I clarify who the seconder of the motion was? I have a Steve Weiss made the motion, and who was the second?
Adriana?
Thank you. Okay,
Sure,
roll
okay.
call is Robert Trimborn,
Aye.
Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Adriana Vondergraaf,
Yes.
Bobby Williams,
Aye.
Bruce Hamus,
Yes.
Steve Weiss.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next item is item 6C. Approval of and authorization for the Director of Airports or designee to sign the first amendment to the lease between RKR Incorporated to correct a description of the leased premises. Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is also in the third and final item for Madeline Harrell, our lease manager tonight. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Madeline.
Thank you. Commissioners, this is an amendment to more efficiently and effectively and accurately document the leased premises for RKR's development. The original lease was negotiated approximately 3 years ago, and the premises was described as an approximate 6-acre parcel. Typically, when we have long-term leases, we have a requirement for the premises to be remeasured once the development has occurred. And so this is a representation of the legal description and survey of the area that is documented by the approved building plans for the developer. And it accurately describes there's a legal description as well as a survey document as attachments to the lease to more effectively document exactly how large the premises are.
Any questions or clarifications from the commission? Hearing none. John, are there any public comments?
No public comments at this time.
Thank you. Hearing no public comment, I'll entertain a motion.
Steve Weiss, so moved.
Maggie, I second it.
Thank you, Anna. Roll call vote. Roll call vote.
Yes, Robert Trimborn,
Aye.
Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Adriana Vondergraff,
Yes.
Bobby Williams,
Aye.
Bruce Hamus,
Yes.
Steve Weiss.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Anna. Next item is item 6D, literally the big ticket item. Authorization for the Director of Airports or designee to accept and sign Federal Aviation Administration Grant number 3.0-06-0179-038-2021 when offered in an estimated amount of $24,179,468, which will provide funds for the runway 725, taxiway connectors, and parallel taxiway pavement construction at Oxnard Airport. Semicolon, authorization for the Director of Airports or designee to apply for, accept, and sign for a matching grant from Caltrans, if offered, and authorization from County Council to execute the certificate of sponsors attorney required by Federal Aviation Administration grant agreements. Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll do a quick setting of the table here and then hand it off to Aaron Powers, our project manager. This is in anticipation of our runway grant. That should say probably actually up to $24,179,468. That would be if all three components of the bids were to be funded at one time by the FAA AIP Airport Improvement Program grant. We're only really anticipating probably the runway portion to be funded this year. However, if we get lucky, all three could be funded up to that amount. So really, that would be up to that amount. And then I don't want to take away from Aaron's presentation on this, but this is trying to get us prepped in advance for. We have a very short timeline in which to accept this grant once it comes in. So this is getting all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed, if you will, in preparation for that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Erin Powers for any further comments or presentations she might have on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Good evening. Thank you, Kip. As Kip mentioned, the item before you is requesting authorization to be able to accept a grant, a federal grant, and also a match to apply for and accept potentially a Caltrans grant for the Oxnard runway and taxiway reconstruction project at Oxnard Airport. We have been working with the FAA and also our commission members. This is a familiar item for the last couple years to get to this point. We actually are currently out to bid. Plans were finalized where the bid period has begun. We expect to receive bids by the end of this month, and the FAA has indicated that they will be, they believe they're going to be positioned to offer a grant shortly after that. With that in mind, the department, in order to meet the potential tight construction timelines needed to kick this off and get it completed this year, we're taking steps to make sure that we have every advantage to get construction started and to take advantage of any potential funding the FAA makes available to us. I do have one slide, if staff could. Could you go to one more?
Yep, there you go.
This does just break out visually for folks that, as Kip had mentioned, the grant is an estimated amount because the actual grant will be based on the bids that come in and a combination of the FAA funding available. So currently, we have one bid package that has 3 elements. The base bid is for the runway 725 reconstruction. We have a bid alternate for the taxiway connectors Alpha through Echo. And then we have a bid alternate, second bid alternate for the parallel taxiway Foxtrot reconstruction. As Kip had mentioned, indications right now from the FAA are that they're focused on the runway, but we are hoping that numbers come in beneficially and perhaps funding shakes out to allow us to progress down that list of items needing reconstruction. We certainly have been working as hard as we can to take advantage and move the whole project forward as one if we're able. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Erin. Any questions of clarification for staff from the commission? Hearing none. John, do we have any public comment?
Nope, no public comment at this time.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion regarding the staff recommendation.
So moved, Steve Weiss.
Second, Adriana Vandergraaf.
Okay, discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead. Mr. Weiss.
Steve Weiss, I just wanted to make a comment, and for us long-serving commissioners like Adriana and Gary Jacobs, what's sad to me, and it has nothing to do with the director or the department, but things seem to be so short-sighted in this runway thing, as far as we're dealing with asphalt versus concrete, and we are where we are, but I think the record should show that we're going down the wrong road as far as longevity, etc. I don't know that we can change that, but I think we should voice our displeasure with going down the same old road time and time again.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right, Mr. Weiss. I mean, concrete is such a better alternative. You get about a 40-year life out of a concrete runway versus about a 15 to 20-year life out of an asphalt runway. No doubt about it. Staff would much rather have that. I'll be honest, we were in a fight for this project just to maintain our current width and our current category. And that took us about a year to fight that fight. So we felt like that fight was the bigger fight on this occasion. And we were happy to withhold our own, if you will, and maintain our current status, maintain our current width, and maintain our current category coming out of this with a D3 category type runway. The FAA was originally sort of guiding us to a smaller runway, based on what they're doing nationwide with runway enhancement projects. But we felt the need to maintain what we have now. So we picked that fight as our fight, if you will. And I'm happy to say we won that fight. But yeah, ideally, you're exactly right. We would have loved to have had concrete. I've done a couple of runway projects over the years, and the ones that have really been the ones that really make you excited is when you can do a concrete runway project that is going to give you 35, 40 years. But again, we were happy to be in the position we are, where we didn't lose ground, if you will, on this runway. So with that added about another $2 to $3 million to the project, just winning the fight of maintaining our current status. But yeah, we did mention concrete, and that just didn't go anywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Any other questions of the commission? So, Mr. Director, could you just kind of go over one more time? So the base bid would be the runway reconstruction, right? Then
That's
right. And then it is the alternate 1 and 2 in, let's say, any kind of order? Would you accept alternate bid 2 and the runway, or would 1 and 2 have to work together, or how would that work?
No, they could be independent of each other, and we would obviously want to choose alternate 1, the taxiway connectors, because it abuts up to the runway, and so that would be all. That's why it's listed as alternate 1. And ideally, one clean sweep. We close the airport and we get them all 3 done at one time. That's the dream scenario, and we're definitely competing for that and trying for that with both the bids and the FAA. Working very aggressively towards that effect, actually. But at the end of the day, it does boil down to where the money flows and how it flows. So we are excited that we're in line for, at a minimum, the base bid this year, and we anticipate no issues with that. But we are hoping for alternate 1 and alternate 2 if it were to work out. But no way of knowing until the bids come in and the grants come in.
Thank you. Are there, I guess, did I ask for public comment? I'm sorry. John.
Looks like we just have one pop-up, Mark Sullivan. Let me get him in. Mark, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and show your screen if you'd like.
I'm trying to find, oh, there we go. Am I on now?
You are on,
yes.
sir.
Since this is a complete reconstruction, I mean, basically, by analogy, taking it down to the studs, because we're going all the way down to the base and start building a whole new runway. What is the cost delta between asphalt and concrete? I always think of concrete or asphalt as being much cheaper on a resurface, but on a complete runway, I really have no idea. That's just a question.
Yeah, I don't know if Ms. Powers has put any estimates together. I'm guessing not, but usually I can tell you from experience, having done a few runways over the years, usually you're oftentimes almost doubling the cost. Not always doubling the cost. It depends on the cost of asphalt at the time. And it's funny that, well, it's not funny, but it's ironic that even when we started looking at the estimates for this project, we were looking at the estimates based on the current cost of oil and the current cost of asphalt roughly a year ago. And that has changed over the last year as oil and asphalt have escalated. So, when you say the cost comparison, it's almost impossible to give a direct cost comparison as a cookie cutter discussion. It depends on the cost of oil, cost of asphalt at the time you're doing the project. I have been involved in projects in the past when oil was so high and therefore asphalt was so high that the cost for concrete was almost comparable. But we're not at that point right now, even though at our gas pumps it looks like we are here in California. We're still not at that point holistically when it comes to pavement mixes and that kind of thing. But I may have stepped on Ms. Powers' toes there, so I'll stop and see if she has anything to add to that she might have looked at otherwise.
Kip, I'm sorry. We did look at the difference in cost early on within the last 2 years, but I don't have that information. It's certainly not fresh in my mind. I apologize for not having that. I know that one of the factors that would have also had to be analyzed as looking into concrete versus asphalt is the construction timeline for the concrete, because certainly we would have had to do the same subgrade work because the subgrade is part of our issue with our infrastructure currently. And so, a concrete runway or concrete taxiway connectors would also probably have increased some of that, the cure time for concrete in order to get aircraft back on might have been another cost that we would have had to do sort of a whole project evaluation on. But we never were able to get that far. We did have discussions with the FAA about life cycle cost. What we got support for was to go the asphalt route.
And Mr. Chairman, I
Understood, yeah.
apologize. I just realized I spoke out of turn because that was a public comment. So I apologize for responding to the public comment without your direction.
That's okay. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for answering the question.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on staff's recommendation.
I so move, Maggie.
Chair, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have Steve Weiss made a motion and a second by Adriana Vondergraaf, which then led into discussion.
Okay.
Oh,
Call for the question.
Call for the question. Sorry. Got confused. Anna, roll call vote.
Thank you. Robert Trimborn,
Aye.
Maggie Bird,
yes.
Adriana Vondergraaf,
Yes.
Bobby Williams,
Aye.
Bruce Hamus,
Yes.
Steve Weiss.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Next item. Item 6E, approval of the 5-year capital improvement plan SIP for Camarillo and Oxnard airports. Authorization for the director of airports or designee to apply for grants to fund projects scheduled for federal fiscal year 2021 and 2022, outlined in the CIP. Upon notification from the Federal Aviation Administration and the California Department of Transportation Aeronautics Program that the funds are available. Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an annual thing we do every year where we look at our, and it's around budget time as we are, and we're about to talk to you about budget here in a few minutes. But we also look at our capital improvement program for the next 5 years, and we polish that up, if you will, and update that every year for the next 5 years. So with that, I also have Ms. Powers, our projects manager, that I think has a couple of more talking points to this. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to her.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello again. As Kip mentioned, each year the airport works with the FAA to update its 5-year capital improvement plan. This is a plan that is required by federal and state agencies in order to be eligible for grant funding. This is especially important when we are dealing with high dollar infrastructure projects like we have identified in the plans before your commission. The projects are listed in order of priority, but it is important to note that there is no guarantee that any project will receive grants as we have requested. With that, I'd actually like to jump into the next slide, please, so we can actually talk about a few of the projects. Starting with Camarillo Airport, we are looking at a total over 5 years of approximately $45.7 million worth of projects. This is, we have some serious infrastructure improvements that we're working towards. Starting in fiscal year 2021, we are actually have requested the FAA to provide planning and environmental study grants to support the future 2025 Camarillo runway and connector taxiway reconstruction that is required here at Camarillo Airport. You'll actually see that this is a theme many times. A project like the runway and taxiway reconstruction project requires multiple phases. We have programmed our ASIP to be able to capture those elements, and I'll explain as we continue to go through. In federal fiscal year 2022, we have identified an update to our Part 150 noise map with expanded public outreach and noise measurements, and we are looking to have this cover our system of airports for Camarillo and Oxnard. This is, especially important in light of continuing development around the airport. Additionally, our current noise studies noise study for Camarillo Airport is at its end of life cycle, being about 20 years old. So we think this will be really beneficial. In federal fiscal year 2023, we take that next step in the towards reconstructing the runway and taxiways. We will be asking the FAA for a final design grant. I apologize, I see a typo there, but we will be asking them for a final design grant to help fund. This is a final design of a project this size is substantial in nature. And so we are making sure that as we go along, that we're being responsible about our outlay of funding, and trying to recapture as much as we can as we go along and get buy-in from the FAA on our projects. In 2024, we'll be taking a break and having a no project year. You'll see that in Oxnard, we continue to have large projects. The FAA, as a system of airports, does look to us to try to balance our projects between our airports. So we have kept that in mind and tried to be responsive to that request by programming a no project year. And then in 2025, this is actually the large project that we're all working up towards, which is the reconstruction of the runway 826 and the asphalt taxiway connector reconstructions. As I mentioned, the total projects programmed is a little over $45 million. At the end of this 5-year process, the airport share is estimated to come out at about $2.5 million. So grants really do fund the majority of our infrastructure projects. Next slide. Jumping over to Oxnard Airport, this is actually exciting that in 2021, we are hoping to be able to jump in on the reconstruction of our runway and our connector and parallel taxiways. In 2022, we actually are beginning the environmental studies to support a pavement strengthening of those runways and taxiways. And we have in our design for the reconstruction, we have elements the FAA, due to our current position, does not allow us to consider. And so we will be leveraging the information to be able to work towards a pavement strengthening project in the future. We also will be looking to obtain funding for our design of an expanded terminal ramp. What that expanded terminal ramp would include is the current concrete area in front of the terminal, and we would be looking to expand perhaps that concrete east to make sure that we have adequate space. In 2023, we would be moving forward to reconstruct that terminal ramp based on the design. And in 2024, after completing the design and the environmental studies, we would be positioned to undertake the pavement strengthening. In 2025, we will begin environmental studies and preliminary planning for a terminal building. We would be looking to have it maintained in the same location, but we would need to definitely upgrade and expand the terminal to provide services that we believe will be in demand in the near future. We also are looking to purchase an additional ARF vehicle. We currently have 2, But one of our service trucks we're looking at will longer term planning will need to retire in the future. So we'll be looking to replace the one of the older units that we currently have. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about our capital improvement plan.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Any questions or clarifications of Ms. Powers?
Yes, I have one. This may be either for Ms. Powers or for Mr. Turner. With the conceptual design for the terminal building, is that moving towards possible consideration of commercial airline again?
It is, yeah. This and forgive me, Ms. Powers, if you want to step in, I'll sort of say a couple of words and then turn it back over to you if you'd like. But yeah, just to jump in a little bit and set the table a little bit on this. This capital improvement program plan for Oxnard is definitely realizing that Oxnard is a Part 139 certified airport for a commercial air service. And we as a staff intend to operate it in that fashion until we're guided otherwise. Now, I will say that we are underway, as you know, with a master and system plan study right now that truly defines our two airports as both independent airports and a collection of airports for the next decade and beyond. So if for some reason we were to come out of that master and system plan study with some type of different direction, then staff will comply with that as well. But as of right now, we are a Part 139 certificated airport. And as such, we are trying to prepare, position Oxnard in a manner that it can accommodate air service, assuming that's the intent for that airport going forward. So these capital improvement plans get updated every year. We'll have our master and system plan study completed at the end of this next year, most likely in time before we do this again. So if something were to change that, then obviously that would alter this capital improvement plan. But with the assumption that because we are 139 certificated now, and has maintained that certification for the last 40 something years, staff has no other knowledge but to expect that to be the case going forward. So yes, this is in anticipation to try to better prepare ourselves for the return of commercial air service, if that be the direction given by the master and system plan study.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, one other comment. I was at Oxnard yesterday and at my own hangar, and what struck me was the interesting combination of paint colors of all the different hangars. They're various colors, various greens, and the very nice tans and so forth. Is there any plan towards moving towards some more consistency in how the hangars look?
Yes. I don't mind stepping in there and letting you know. I'm very accustomed.
I'm being very polite, Mr. Turner.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. We currently don't have really an airport development standard that we require. We have a very, very, very outdated one that's, I think, about 40 years old. But yeah, it's one of the things that I've already discussed with staff that I want us to work towards. We just haven't had time yet. But yeah, I do anticipate what will be an airport development standards, very much like a commercial minimum standards that we have in place for our businesses now. And the airport development standards is a very common document that most airports or a lot of airports have. And what it does is it provides that consistency that you're referring to. And yes, we are working towards that.
Why, thank you, Mr. Turner. It just struck me.
Yeah.
We were, properly disposing of used oil. And as we were driving along to the appropriate location, I was just looking around going, oh my goodness.
yeah, we've got sort of a little bit of a hodgepodge out there right now. So
Yeah, just a little.
we recognize the need for that that consistency as well. So yeah, you will see that coming as soon as staff can find the time to start working on that avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Absolutely.
Any other questions of clarification of staff before we go to public comment? I have one. My math might be fuzzy, but I look at the matching funds. Ms. Powers, could you please explain those in more detail? Because the Camarillo Airport shows almost a 50-50 split between Caltrans and the airport share. And in this slide, it shows that it's more airport heavy and Caltrans light. Please explain the difference.
Sure. So typically, our funding levels, we get 90% from the FAA and 5% matching from Caltrans of the federal dollars, which equates to about 4.5%. However, in our ASIP, we have accounted for the fact that with several, when we have very large projects with high dollar values, Caltrans is unable, due to their funding levels, to actually provide that traditional match. They typically cap their funding at $150,000, which you will see in the details of our plan, that we actually are going ahead and anticipating that will be the cap on some of those high dollar projects. And in some cases, that cap even moves a little bit lower. So so the representation of the breakdown is as accurate an estimate that we have based on the projects programmed and the funding we believe will be available from our matching partner in Caltrans.
So again, can you go back to the Camarillo ASIP real quick? And it's 2.1 there, and it's 600 at the other. And so you're saying that, and it's almost the same dollar amount for both ASIPs, but it has to do with Caltrans available money. I'm just a little confused, I'm sorry.
Sure, hold on, I'm going to, and I apologize, I'm having to read the details in order to try to provide an answer.
While you're looking, do they treat the ASIPs as separate and apart from each other, or as one item?
So we do. So the CIP for Oxnard and Camarillo are separate, but the FAA views them as a system.
So is Caltrans also?
Correct. So so for example, I think that, and I'm trying to, we have 3 very high dollar, meaning multi-million dollar projects at Oxnard, where we are only anticipating $150,000 per project, because Camarillo's and I'm just switching.
We basically carry the load. Caltrans is definitely a partner, but it's at a max 150,000 per year.
I understand. It was just the way it was represented in this between the two ASIPs, there's a dramatic difference, 600,000 versus 2.1 on this side. And that's the only reason why I brought it up. It just dramatically different numbers.
So I guess, Mr. Trimborn, I'd have to get back to you.
You can get back to me on that. Thank you. With that, we'll go to public comment. John, do you have any comment?
There is one public comment. Let me bring him in. That is Mr. Mark Sullivan.
It's me again on questions on the runway. I'm trying to understand the logic of the FAA, and you may not know the answer to this, but it seems so peculiar to me that in fiscal year 21, we're going to spend low 20 millions to do an asphalt runway at Oxnard instead of concrete, and then 3 years later, then do asphalt strengthening. In the life cycle analysis they do with the difference. If the difference between the asphalt and concrete was approximately 20 million, it seems to me that the overall difference gets pretty small when you add in the additional $10 million in 24. I know this is not, it's probably an FAA question, but as a taxpayer, I really don't understand that, how that doesn't factor into the life cycle. If any of you there know, sure would be helpful to know your insights on it. That's my question.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Staff, can you get back to Mr. Sullivan offline, maybe on that answer? Mr. Turner?
Beg pardon?
Mr. Sullivan had a question. I was just requesting that you approach him offline on that answer.
Sure.
If you have one. And so that ends public comment. Comes back to the commission. I'll entertain a motion regarding staff recommendation.
I'll make a motion for approval.
I think we already have a motion and a second.
I'm sorry.
Discussion.
All right. We'll call for the question, Aaron.
Discussion.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, Steve Weiss again.
Yeah.
Comment, and I, being around the block here, one thing that's disturbing, or I don't know that we make a good point of this, but here, this funding process is, everything we're doing is taxpayer dollars. So sometimes I think we need to be stewards to make sure that these things are being done in the right way and without waste, et cetera. But it's like a big win-win because, okay, the federal share is like 90%, but we're all contributing to that. So I think we need to remind ourselves that we're all contributing to this budget here. Just a comment. And I think we need to remind ourselves instead of saying, oh, who cares because the feds are picking up 90% of the cost of this thing. And I think we're all there, but I think I just need to remind everyone that that's where we're at.
Mr. Turner, could you kind of explain where the monies come from for the AIP projects?
Yeah, I'd like to clarify that a lot for both Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Weiss. There are 0 tax dollars in any of these projects. Not one penny is a tax dollar. All of these monies are airport improvement program grant funds that airports nationwide out of the NIPIAS, the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, pay into these pots of money, if you will. And then when we qualify for getting that money back, we raise our hand and we get the money back for priority type projects such as the runway. So there is 0 tax dollars. The airport collects 0 tax from any tax base at all. county, state, or federal. We're totally an enterprise fund. We totally operate just like a private business. And any of the airport improvement program grant funds that we get are because we, as a system of airports, have put in money in out of user fees into those pots of money, and we get that money back when we qualify for the appropriate type projects. And in regards to, you know, the fact that we very carefully strategize these projects, I can't tell you how much planning goes into these projects in advance of us having the kind of conversations we're having with you tonight to determine how we can approach these projects in the most cost-efficient manner, how we can approach these projects and maximize the benefit for both the opportunity to raise our hand to withdraw funds from that pot of money that we've put into, and then get that back, and then how we can qualify for these projects. It is a very complicated process and a very strategic process that takes a lot of effort. When we come to you and we present these presentations like we're doing tonight, it's literally the culmination of probably, in this case, 2 to 3 years worth of work, and many staff hours, many consultant hours, and many different people that have come together to try to make this thing work. And in regards to the 20-something million that was referred to for the Oxnard Runway project, that's not for the Oxnard Runway project. That's for if we do all 3 components of that project: the Oxnard Runway, the Oxnard Taxiway connectors, and then the Oxnard Parallel Taxiway Foxtrot. So that's 3 different elements of work combined that make 20-something million dollars, not the runway. The runway by itself, I believe, is about 13 million. Correct me, Aaron, if I'm wrong on that. But there is a ton of work that goes into this and 0 tax dollars.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Anna, is there a motion or a motion and a second on the floor?
It was earlier stated that there was a motion and a second, but in fact, there was not. I heard Bruce Hamus make a motion, but no second to that.
So entertain a second.
I'll second it, Adriana.
Thank you. Call for the question. Anna, roll call vote.
Robert Trimborn,
Aye.
Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Adriana Vandergraaf,
Yes.
Bobby Williams,
Aye.
Bruce Hamus,
Yes.
Steve Weiss.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Anna. Item 6F, appointment of 1 member of the Aviation Advisory Commission to the Planning Advisory Committee for the Airport Master Plan Study. Mr. Director.
Absolutely, thank you. And we actually have a presentation for this. I'd ask staff to cue the next slide, please. So I don't want to read to you, but I spent a lot of effort putting these slides together. So I'll sort of follow along with you and sort of summarize them as we go. There's only 5 or 6 here. So, but the Airport Master and System Plan Study is, I've talked about a good bit already tonight, or somewhat already tonight, and then many times prior to tonight. It is a comprehensive long-range study, and it truly is going to define our airports for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. It's a very important study. I would dare say this one is, and I've said this already to you before, so I apologize for being repetitive tonight, but I would dare say this one is the most important master and system plan study, in my opinion, that these 2 airports have probably ever done. We're tackling the issues head on. We've got a lot of issues that need to be tackled in this Airport Master and System Plan study. Staff is not advocating one or the other. We literally, and Mr. Weiss was talking about just prior to the meeting how I'm a sports fan. So I am a sports fan, and I use a lot of sports analogies. But at the end of the day, if you want to comparatively say that staff is like a football team that's out on the field, I'm sort of the quarterback, if you will, and I literally look to the sidelines for the game plan and for the next play. And this master plan study really determines that. So when we look to the sidelines, we're looking to the sidelines of the county as a whole. And we're trying to find out from the constituency of the county, the businesses, the leadership, the city leaderships that the airports sit in, and the other 8 cities that make up the county, and then of course, again, all the county leadership and all the business leadership and all of the tenants and all of the stakeholders. We're trying to figure out in this master and system plan study what that body wants to produce and go forward. So I've said to staff 1,000,000 times, and they're probably tired of hearing it, and I'll say it to you folks. At the end of the day, we just want to go do and build what the county wants us to build. So if it's the best glider airport in the country, great. We'll go build the best glider airport in the country. It'll be on the cover of every magazine, and we'll win that. We'll win that race, if that's what we're told to go build. But that's what this study does. This study literally tells us what these airports need to be going forward. We don't advocate for this one way or the other. We do educate, and there's a difference. We give you the benefits throughout the course of this study in an education platform about the pros and cons of certain services and things like that. But that's what this study is. Next slide, please. So with that, it's an opportunity to engage with and educate the general public, as I've just talked about. And it literally is based on that. This study is to educate and engage the general public on all of the issues. It provides vision, and at the end of it, it provides vision and guidance for the future development of our 2 airports as a system of airports. It offers justification for projects that then may be eligible for FAA and Caltrans shared funding, because they require us to do proper steps like this in advance to then position projects on our CIPs in years to come. The study itself is going to include 4 public workshops, a minimum of 4, held at key milestones to solicit feedback from county residents and airport stakeholders. And it is truly, as much as you can have, a very transparent and collaborative process. Next slide. It concludes at the end of the study with a local document that will then be presented for approval to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors. The only thing the FAA actually approves in this study are the aviation demand forecast and the airport layout plan drawing set. So they keep the study honest in that regard, in making sure that the demand forecast are justified, and that the airport layout plan drawing set is really so the airport can then justify future projects. Next slide, please. The purpose of the Planning Advisory Committee, which is what I'm here to talk to you tonight about, and hopefully getting this body to select a member to participate, is to provide a critical input into the airport master and system plan study. The PAC members are intended to represent a variety of organizations and individuals with interest in the use and future development of the Ventura County airports. And examples of that, as I've pointed out earlier, are stakeholders, businesses, local government, aeronautical and area economic development interest. Next slide. The PAC, the Planning Advisory Committee, reviews and comments on elements of the study while in draft form. The PAC is a non-voting advisory body, and it is the responsibility of those PAC members to then come back and communicate with their respective organizations. So the member you select tonight would be an independent member that would come back and communicate to you, hopefully, in future meetings of this Airport Advisory Commission. So you're not just hearing from this guy, you're hearing from your own representative that you chose as to what's going on with this study. And then if there's feedback that you have, this member takes that along with staff, of course, back to the group that's doing this, not hosting this, we've hired to do this study, third-party consultant, which is Kaufman and Associates in this case, and they input that feedback into the study and into the process. Next slide. And this is just talking about how we're going to make sure that we truly reach all elements of our county. We're going to have English and Spanish language progress websites will be developed to distribute draft materials and allow the general public to track progress and submit comments. So while the Planning Advisory Committee, or the PAC, is a very important group providing feedback for a constituency of groups that they're representing, the public is really what's going to be the leader on this thing. And just, this is just letting you know how we're going all out to try to make sure that we do everything to garner and retrieve that public participation. And I'm not sure if there's another slide or not. I think that's it. So with that, that is the presentation for the staff to the Advisory Commission, Mr. Chairman. And our request of you tonight is that you would consider appointing a member of your body to represent this Planning Advisory Committee. We're going to be asking the same thing of the authorities on Thursday night when we meet with them. And then we are doing the same thing in other elements throughout the community of either leadership of cities or business organizations or chambers and things of that nature. And we're going to have up to 20 members on this Planning Advisory Committee. And that is the staff report. Happy to field any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Any questions or clarification of the staff before we go to public comment? Hearing none. John, do we have any public comment?
No public comment at this time.
Thank you. So the item before us is basically nominate a member from this advisory commission to this, excuse me, what is it again? The
Planning Advisory Committee for the master plan study.
Thank you.
Yes, this is Adriana. I'd like to make a nomination.
Go ahead. What's your nomination? Who are you nominating?
I would like to nominate Robert Trimborn.
Thank you, but I'm going to have to respectfully decline. I have
Ah,
many things on my plate. I'd like to do it, but I really don't have the time. I've got an air show I've got to run in August. And
okay.
it's
Too bad.
In my time. I'll nominate as a chair. I'll take the chair's prerogative, Steve Weiss. He has a lot of experience and a lot of history of this airport and the airport system as a whole. I feel he'd be a great person to have on this panel.
I can support that.
So with that, any other nomination? Mr. Weiss, are you okay with that?
Reluctantly, I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Any other nominations on this? Hearing none, I guess I'll call for the question. All in favor of Steve Weiss being our representative on this board and panel?
Aye.
Roll call,
Aye.
roll call vote.
Oh, roll call. Sorry.
Robert Trimborn,
Aye.
Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Adriana Vondergraaf,
Yes.
Bobby Williams,
Aye.
Bruce Hamus,
Yes.
Steve Weiss.
I'll abstain.
That motion passes unanimously with one abstention.
Congratulations, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Go Steve.
Okay, with that, we come to item 6G, which is a review of the fiscal year 2021-22 proposed budget for the Ventura County Department of Airports. Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And next slide, please. Next slide. So this is gonna be a tag team effort. We have Jamal on the line with us as well, who is our fiscal manager, who does an outstanding job every year, helping us put our budget together and has done so again this year. And I give all of the accolades to anything related to all the efforts that go into this to Jamal. He has really done an outstanding job in the 2 years that I've been here. And I can only imagine even prior, making sure that we not only meet our deadlines for the county and all of the audits and everything that's affiliated with our budget process throughout the year. And believe me when I say there is a lot of effort that goes into this as well. And then he also makes sure that he knows that I and he share this alike, and that we're both very conservative. We both very much want to make sure that we have plenty of money to work with, and that we're not overspending in any kind of fashion like that. So Jamal does an outstanding job. So he and I are going to tag team this effort tonight. We've only got 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 slides, I think, here to show you. I'm going to start off with just talking about a little bit what led us up to where we are and how we decided to go forward with our new budget or our proposed budget going forward. So just talking about a little bit of our current budget that we're in and the focus of what that was, you can only imagine it was COVID related. So we found out March 17th of 2020 when the county went into the COVID mode, I call it. And, you know, it really changed the lives of everyone and all of you included, I'm sure. And it also changed the lives and everything that we were doing. So we implemented in the current fiscal budget we're in that was adopted in May, June, and then the 1st of July was the first date. So the current fiscal budget we're in now, we implemented this past year a zero-based budget for this current year. We prepared immediately following the evolution of COVID into Ventura County. We prepared for reduced net revenue scenarios of 5, 10, 15, even up to 20, 25%. We immediately implemented a temporary hiring freeze on all positions, all open positions. And I want to think that, and I may be wrong on this, but I want to think the Department of Airports might have been the first department to voluntarily do that. We reduced non-essential cost at all levels. We deferred non-essential projects. We reevaluated all capital projects. We immediately approved rent deferment for option for our tenants for the 2 months that we saw the adjustment to COVID until we realized that the COVID pandemic was not hitting the airport in the same manner as other businesses. So, but for the 2 months that we did see an adjustment, we immediately went to the Board of Supervisors and got an approved rent deferment for those option for those tenants. Staff was assigned to assist and still is assigned to assist with disaster recovery efforts. We still have 2 of our staff out now, excuse me, that's been on that effort for the last year or over a year now. We immediately started implementing concepts like teleworking for a few members of our staff that had the ability to still function in their capacities of work at home, trying to separate staff. And then we made large investments in remote meeting equipment, much like what's carrying our meeting tonight. So we had a lot of evolutions come out of COVID that is going to, some of those things are going to carry with us going forward. Just to give you an idea of our hours and cost allocated to COVID thus far, we've got over 3,600 hours of staff time in the past year at a cost of about $154,000, $55,000 in the past year. Next slide, please. Talking about our 2021 highlights, because I don't know that I really call COVID a highlight. So talking about our 2021 highlights, we did keep making progress, and I'm excited to say that. Even in a time of turmoil for our country and our county, the Department of Airports continue to make strides and make new highlights. One of those is something we've talked about tonight in the Oxnard Runway, Taxiway, and Taxiway Connectors project, which is a culminated roughly approximately $26.5 million project if all three of those elements come together at one time. The exciting part is that during the turmoil of the COVID pandemic, we continued with the design on that, and we got 100% design on all 3 components of those items completed. And we're actually, as Aaron Powers pointed out to you earlier, our projects manager, we're out for bid now and waiting for those bids to come in. We talked about this a little bit earlier tonight, but we were able to maintain our category D3 runway category. That is such a huge, huge stride. The direction the airport was going prior was because of guidance, at the time, was to actually reduce our runway, where we were going to go from a 100-foot wide runway to a 75-foot wide runway. And when I realized that, when I got here a couple of years ago, I was like, no, we're not going to do that. We want to maintain what we've got. It's too hard to get something back when you lose it. So we started a campaign with the FAA that took us about a year, and we were successful with that campaign. And we've been able to now be able to say that we maintain partnership with the FAA for keeping a category D3 runway, keeping our 100-foot wide runway, and having it funded. So that was a couple of big wins with the FAA that took us some time and some effort to do, and we're happy and excited about that. During the course of the design, we hosted 3 public workshops. We also have gone to the Board of Supervisors and asked for and received permission for approving a rent relief for up to 4 months for our Oxnard tenants, excuse me, during the closure, the anticipated closure of the runway when we do the runway work this summer. And we have an anticipated start date of construction sometime in June of 2021, assuming, of course, the grants come in time as expected. Another accomplishment we were able to realize in the current fiscal year was the Airport Master and System Plan study that we've talked about so much tonight. That also was the realization of a $750,000 grant that fully funds that study. So we're not using any airport dollars out of pocket for that study. This study was not even in our capital improvement plan or in our planning whatsoever, but it was something that we realized the need for about a year ago, and we started pitching the idea to the FAA, and the FAA agreed with us that the timing was appropriate for us to go ahead and push forward in this study to try to get a true snapshot of what these airports need to look like and grow like for the next 10 to 15 years. And they also did so in partnership with us by fully funding the study in the tune of the $750,000 grant. So we were very excited about that during this fiscal year. And we've now, as of mid-November, this past November, kicked that study off, which is about a 12 to 18 month study, with the first planning meeting coming up, or the first workshop, excuse me, coming up with an anticipated date of May 13th. Another item that we were able to accomplish during this fiscal year was terminal and infrastructure improvements at Oxnard. We really took Oxnard under our wing this year, and in my opinion, gave it some much needed attention. We did some terminal enhancements on the inside, painted the inside of the terminal. We redid the parking lots outside with slurry seals and striping and the driveways. And we did some work on the taxiways and the runways with new striping and getting us back compliant with 139 certifications that we needed to be compliant on. And we just excited about the efforts that we made there this year as well. And then finally, another milestone that we're excited about is the recent completion of the Northeast Hangar project, almost roughly $10, $11 million project on the Camarillo Airport. This project had been inception, I think, in 2017. So it was something I think everyone was excited to see move forward and take progress and come to completion. And we got that completed. And actually staff right now is working towards filling those hangars and the efforts that are associated with that. Next slide, please. And just the final highlight of the 2021 budget that you have before you here is the fact that we not only got all of those accomplishments done as we've talked about, but as you'll see from the numbers showing here, that we're trending very nicely in this fiscal year budget. For the 9 months ending March 31st, 2021, which is our most current numbers collected to discuss, you can see here that we have a net operating gain of 1.9 million, a little over 1.9 million. So we're tracking really well, and we've done some positive things in a time period when the whole world, quite frankly, was in a little bit of turmoil with this COVID pandemic. We've been very blessed, in my opinion. Next slide, please. This slide touches on our focus for the next year, or for this next fiscal budget that we're proposing to you and talking about tonight. So the focus of that budget is going to be very similar as to what we did in this current fiscal budget that we're talking about. And that is the 2021 and the 22 budget will retain a zero-based approach. So we're looking at another consecutive year of maintaining a zero-based approach budget. It maintains the ability, if we were to need to, because if things were to go south due to the COVID pandemic that we can't anticipate now, we've already factored in the ability that if we had to, we could reduce our revenue scenarios of 10 to 15% and be able to absorb that and maintain everything that we're talking to you about tonight. We have our cash reserves solidly in place for all of the planned projects that we're talking with you about tonight. The capital projects that we've focused on are the projects that are FAA shared cost projects. So we're not focusing on projects that are not shared cost projects. We've sort of kicked those to the curb and held off on most of those except for a couple of maintenance projects. We have no new FTE positions, full-time employee positions that we're recommending. We are going to fill some open positions that we desperately need, but we're not recommending any new positions. It includes waived rents for Oxnard tenants during the runway construction for up to 4 months. This budget does. And this budget also, the proposed budget also deferred planned increase rates for another year in the rent and fee schedule. So again, another year in a row where we're not raising any rents and fees to our tenant base, realizing the importance of trying to get our community through the COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. And with this, I'm going to pause here and turn it over to Jamal. And Jamal is the expert that's helped us put these numbers together. And he's going to touch base on the next 2 or 3 slides about what our numbers actually look like for the proposed budget. So Jamal.
Thank you, Kip. For our total budget for FY 21-22, we're projecting appropriations of $6,730,000. That is without depreciation. Revenues, we're expecting $7,658,000, leaving us a net operating gain of $928,531. That's without depreciation. We feel good about meeting those numbers. I track very closely how we do, so I feel our projections are going to meet those numbers. Next slide, please. These are just our combined revenues by source. They're very similar to the previous years. I will let you review those at your own time. Next slide, please. Same thing about combined appropriations. The percentages are very, very close to previous years. Next slide, please. This slide is Camarillo Airport's capital projects for this coming fiscal year. I've listed the capital projects that are grant funded versus non-grant funded projects. For Camarillo Airport, we have 2 projects: the runway taxiway reconstruction with 25% conceptual design and CEQA analysis. Our cost is going to be $393,000.7, and we're expecting a grant of $372,000, leaving net departmental cost of $21,600. Of course, we have the funding sources there from the FAA and the state match. The second grant funded project is rehabilitation of the south portion of Taxiway A. We're looking at a cost of $250,000, and you see our grant revenue $236,000, leaving departmental cost of $13,750. For the non-grant funded project at Camarillo, we have safety enhancements for the area between taxiway F and G, $40,000. That's all of the airport's money, airport enterprise fund source. So the total for Camarillo Airport for projects is $683,750. We're expecting net departmental cost of $75.4 thousand. And you see our funding sources there. Next slide, please. Oxnard Airport, we have the 3 grants that Kip went over in pretty much great detail earlier. There are your numbers: $13.7 million for to reconstruct runway 7-25. We see a net cost to the department of $1.2 million. And as Kit mentioned earlier, the reconstruction of the connector taxiways and taxiway F, totaling that $26 million number. We also have two non-grant funded projects at Oxnard. Repairs to the fuel farm for Tank 4, we estimate $50,000 there. That would be our funds, and some fencing we're going to be doing at the property east of Ventura Road. $35,000 is we're expecting for that project. So the total capital project cost for Oxnard Airport at this point in time, as Kip said, is if everything falls into line, it's going to be $26.9 million with a net airport cost of $2.3 million. Next slide, please. This is for Camarillo Road and Lighting, or otherwise known as Camarillo Utility Enterprise, Q. This is the information on how it's run. The airport picks up 66% of the cost of the queue. Next slide, please. And we have two projects there, pavement rehabilitation at Post and Willis, and rehab of Airport Way and West Early. The first project is $67,000, and the Airport Way in West Early is $78.5, leaving a total grant projects of $145,000, which the Q will receive $145,000 in funding from the participants. Next slide. Oh, that's it for now. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions of clarification for staff? I have one, Mr. Director. So the term zero-based budget approach, could you please expand on that slightly?
Actually, I'll ask the expert too. Jamal, if you don't mind, you probably give a better explanation on it than I can.
Sure. It's really, it's starting from ground zero. When we ask the department heads what they expect they'll need in the forthcoming year, we expect to start at ground zero. So because you received funds in the previous year doesn't mean you're going to get those funds in the upcoming year unless you need them. So that's simply the definition of a zero-based budget.
Thank you, Jamal.
Thank you. I just have one other question. So the fund balance for the entire division, is that shown somewhere in the budget?
Yes, it is. It's we have the very first page, actually, the cash flow report will show you where we're going to start in cash and what we predict we're going to be ending in reserves by year for the next 5 years. If the projects happen in the timeframes that we see, and we add approximately a cost of living 3%, which is the same as we have done every year.
So the zero-based approach, you basically look at the revenues that the enterprise fund will generate and work from that as far as what will fund the airport for the division or department. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So you don't use previous balance to as a starting point. You use the zero balance to start.
No, we don't. We go through a very, very extensive review of all of our revenue, all of our funding sources. It takes quite some time to get there.
Thank you, Jamal. Any other questions of clarification from the commission before we go to public comment? Hearing none. John, do we have any public comment?
No public comment at this time.
Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion regarding staff's recommendation.
Steve Weiss, so moved.
Do I hear a second?
Maggie, I'll second.
So discussion, any discussion from the commissioners? Hearing none, I will call for the question. Anna, roll call vote.
Robert Trimborn,
Aye.
Maggie Bird,
Yes.
Adriana van der Graaf. I believe you're on mute, Ms. van der Graaf.
I don't see her on the.
Or still muted.
Still muted.
I can come back to Ms. van der Graaf.
Okay.
Bobby Williams,
Aye.
Bruce Hamus,
Yes.
Steve Weiss,
Aye.
and Ms. van der Graaf. I show you on mute.
Hit your space bar.
We need her.
And my apologies, it was not unmuting for me. Yes, my apologies.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Anna. And that brings us to the director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pretty short report tonight. I'd first like to say thank you to my team, Aaron, Jamal, Anna, John, Dave, just to name the ones, and Madeline just on the call tonight. We have a very good team that does a lot of hard work. You know, we're running 2 airports with less staff than I typically run one. Just to give you some insight on that. And they do a heck of a job. I mean, they do a really good job. So I'm very proud of my team, and I want to say thank you for all of the work that goes into this. We work a lot of hours to get you the reports and things that you're hearing tonight, and the things that we turn in and do, and the things that we try to make come forward. So it's definitely a team effort, and we have a great team. So thank you for that. Really, the only item that I wanted to update the commission on tonight is based off of our discussion of the lease last month. Since that time, we have asked county council to interact and meet with the Leslie, I think her name is Leslie Adams. It's a representative that the Cahota Group had put forth as one of their speakers in the last meeting, and they've been meeting I think a couple of times at least since that last meeting, and just wanted to show that we have been making additional progress in that regard on the lease item. So really, I don't have anything else to offer for a director's report tonight, but I am happy to field any questions that the commission may have.
Any questions of Kip? So, Mr. Turner, when is your estimated time of the hangar lease coming back to the commission?
I don't envision it being very long, but I'll let you. I'll keep you posted. It could. I don't know. It could be next month. It could be the following month, but I don't think it'd be any longer than that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of the director? Hearing none. Reports?
Nothing to add to the reports other than fielding any questions you may have.
Receive and file. Correspondence, we see none. Commissioner comments. Any comments from the commissioners? I have one. Again, we're still planning to have the Wings Over Camarillo this year. Our go, no-go month is coming up in May 15th to be exact, is our target. And it all depends upon, of course, the state of California and the county of Ventura's position regarding COVID restrictions, how that might impact the event. But for now, we're pressing forward as if the event will happen. And with that, I have no other comments. Any other comments from anybody? Going once. Bruce? Bruce? I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Hi, Mr.
Mr. White.
I wanted to comment, Kip, that you and your staff, I think you guys did an outstanding job of putting this stuff together tonight. To kind of dovetail on what you said, I know you have a really good team. I know you're running 2 airports, and me being on the commission, I'm sure the other guys on the commission as well, really appreciate your efforts and the time and things that you put together for us to take. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll concur with Bruce. You guys did a spectacular job.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Going once? Going twice? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move adjournment.
Second.
Thank you very much for everybody for coming out tonight, and the public and the staff. That was a great meeting. Enjoy the rest of your month, and I will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.